Dana and I used to do this thing where we had a double stroller and it was like stacked like this. One was a little bit lower, one was a little bit higher. On this hill, one of us would run down, one of us would push the stroller, and the other one would be down there and like catch it. And the kids loved it. They would laugh so hard. They'd be like, "Wee, do it again." One time, Dana would run down and I gave it like an extra push, and all of a sudden the stroller went like this and went over the top, and both kids were strapped in. So they're like strapped in as they go over, and I just watched it in slow motion. It was like, no, and couldn't like get to it. And it was a total dad fail.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast, episode 25 of season 1. And we've already begun recording season 2, so stay tuned. If you can believe it, we've got 25 more Shawnisms to unpack in depth with highly successful people each week coming at you very soon. Not to mention a bonus episode for season 1, episode 26, next week, as well, to address the first and foremost Shawnism you'll have found in the introduction of my book, if you read it. And my guest for that is an internationally known name. You will love it. As you know by now, this is not just another interview podcast. Instead, we jump right into a specific Shawnism each week. These are simply true principles and useful tactics for success in life, not just business. My book, also called Let Me Save You 25 Years, where today's 25th of 25 topic comes from, is intentionally very short. So think of this as the long version of that book, where we can go even deeper into these topics that anyone with ambition can either learn the hard way or this way. Today, our guest is a founder and CEO just like me, and I have had a front row seat to watching him maintain his top ambitions, even as I believe it has taken much longer, and I think been harder than either one of us would have imagined when I first heard of his slam dunk plans years ago. Thankfully, he has built something tremendously valuable and good for the world, which is always better, from my point of view, than any quick buck ever is. Now for just a few of my own thoughts on today's topic: maintain top ambition with infinite patience. See, patience is not something that's typically associated with entrepreneurs. I am not a patient person. It was forced upon me by the long saga that is Lovesac. From the days of making them on the floor of my parents' basement, riding that up to 40 Lovesac locations, bootstrapping, winning $1 million on TV with Richard Branson, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy following, having raised venture capital, and that's where they wanted to take us and start over, and successful reorg. We reemerged in 2006, moved my little family, my wife and I, to Stamford, Connecticut, which is where I met Nate Checketts, for what I promised my wife, Tiffany, would be a 3-year plan to build the business big enough to sell and maybe make $1 million. That was 2007. It would be a full decade later before the business was finally truly profitable, ready to sell in the form of going public by 2018. And even then it was a ride up and down into COVID. And I thought we were going to face bankruptcy again when we were forced to close all of our Lovesac showrooms in 1 week, when 80% of our sales occurred there. Instead, our sales exploded as people stayed home. Our stock shot up past $1 billion, and then eventually all the way back down again to our IPO price, like today. 6 years later, having 7x the company in sales-wise and made it profitable and cash flow positive, all this stuff. So here we are today, and I'll just share that the most freeing decision I ever made in this last 5-year arc has come fairly recently. Let's just go another 25. If that's what it takes. When I decided to just not care how long it takes, we are going to build Lovesac into the most beloved brand in America. Now I can be patient. There's no downturn, no pullback, no emergency, no setback, no one quitting, no one leaving, no, competition that can phase me or my team when that's your attitude. Maintain top ambition with infinite patience. Here we go. What is your dream job? What kind of mega company would you want to land a job at in your late 20s or early 30s if you could just imagine a storybook career? If you were, say, a business and finance pro that loves sports above all else, perhaps that would be somewhere like the NBA, the PGA, the NFL. What then would it take to get you to quit that dream job with the NFL to pursue a startup? Today's guest did exactly that, and I got to watch it go down. Mid-teens 2000s, inspired by all of the action and direct-to-consumer marketing, Rhone was founded to build a brand that might resonate with men the way Lululemon had caught on fire with women in those days. High-end, quality, good creative, purpose-led. Not only is he an athlete, an entrepreneur, but he does so while taming his type 1 diabetes, is in fact chairman of the national nonprofit Beyond Type 1, and maintains a successful marriage while raising 3 boys through all of this for as long as it takes to get there, which is why I just had to get him to break down this 25 of 25th topic: maintain top ambition with infinite patience. Mr. Nate Checketts.
Man alive. I don't know what the cost to fly you out for an intro is, but it's probably worth it.
You can't afford
it. Yeah, that's true. That I'm sure is true. My gosh, it's so good to be on with you, man. And I'm really excited for this. I've been listening to the pod, and feel absolutely privileged to be on with you.
Thank you. Great to see you, Nate. For the record, is I consider one of my close friends. We met years and years ago when our kids were in strollers.
Yeah,
we're trying to cling to them. And anyway, it's been fun to watch our families grow up and our businesses grow up.
I've been vocal about this every time I've talked to you, but I don't know how many people know that Rhone would not exist without Shawn Nelson. For a lot of reasons. And we could detail some of them, and you can cut any of this out or keep any of it if you want. But the truth is when we started, it was like a side hustle. It was very much like this project that we put on the side. And but of course, no real business can be a side hustle. So I'm working at the NFL, and I take Shawn out to dinner because he's the entrepreneur that I really know and respect, and he's a good friend. And so I take him to this Japanese restaurant that I think will impress him because I know he likes sushi. And I say, Shawn, I think this company might work, but I need to go hire someone to run it. Somebody who really knows clothing and really knows merchandising and apparel and direct to consumer. And I don't really know any of that. And you listen patiently. You also helped me figure out how to use chopsticks better because I was a bit of a novice. And you looked at me and were like, you should run it. And I remember thinking, no, it's not. I kind of tried to explain away, and you talked about, look, in your company, I tell people all the time they need to wear their shirt. And in your case, it's an actual shirt. You need to put the shirt on and own it. Don't be ashamed of it. Be proud of it. And I never forgot that. And it was shortly thereafter that I decided to say, all right, I'm gonna leave the security of a 401k and go after this. And then you even stopped into one of our earliest factory visits. We made you a business card. You remember this?
Yeah, I remember.
On the fly, making a business card. Shawn Nelson, advisor, and so yeah, you've been a really important part of our growth. A story that not many people know, but you deserve every bit of credit.
I didn't even remember the detail. I remember going to dinner distinctly, and I remember it as an idea. And this is why I had to get you, because it is my perception that when you hatch this idea, and you and your partners, and you saw this opportunity, right? You saw Lulu and you saw what's going on in activewear, and you're like, oh my gosh, we could just own this. We have, you grew up in that Northeast window where you've got all this young, talented money, work in this triangulation of workouts and fitness, everything going on, wellness. And it just seemed like a home run. I sat there kind of, every time I ever hear a business idea, I'm always jealous. I'm at one of these meetings, it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds so much better than mine.
Yeah. It seems so much easier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was listening to you going no, this is a thing, man. And I can't remember giving you that advice. That's cool that's the case. But yeah, that would have been one of the Shawnisms that maybe we'll make season 2. Wear the t-shirt, right? I remember there were times when I felt so proud of Lovesac, and there are times where I was so embarrassed to be the beanbag
totally
boy.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you're getting started, and No, I remember getting on airplanes, and of course, you can't afford any kind of nice seat. I still fly economy,
Yeah.
all the time, but I'd be like in the middle seat in the back of a plane and sitting next to someone, and they somehow, you know, I don't know what it is about me that people just think, oh, this is a person who really wants to talk. But inevitably, I get into a lot of conversations on airplanes,
Yeah.
and they will say something like, oh, what do you do for work? And I would say, oh, I run this clothing company. And they'd be like, oh, what's it called? I'd say Rhone. And they're like, oh, good for you. Like, that's so great. And you could tell that they were just
That's neat.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was embarrassed. And, and
You would have
I've taught
preferred to
so,
say, I work for the NFL, man.
yeah, because I was used to saying that. And
Yeah.
everyone would say, oh my, like, you work for the NFL?
Yeah.
And I was always confused when people would say, "What, did you play in the NFL?" I was like, "Are you looking at the same person?" I did, like, maybe I was a kicker, but yeah. So at the time, if like that advice of wearing the T-shirt, I thought about that all the time. Like, be so proud that you want everyone to know about Rhone, and like actually wear the shirt. And now it's kind of funny to come full circle. The business is in excess of 9 figures in revenue, and I've thought about. I remember when you told me Sactionals, like the very first time you started talking about Sactionals, and you said to me, "This is going to be $1 billion product," and you were so convinced. I was like, "It will be." Like, I bought into it, and we own and love our Sactional, and it's amazing.
Cool.
It's a great product, and so I believe Rhone is going to be $1 billion brand, and I've bought into that mindset, and I think that idea of being proud of your company, which sounds so foreign to people who don't do this, but when you do it, you're like, oh, I totally get it.
Yeah.
That was really helpful for me.
Oh, that's powerful. Thanks for sharing that. I'm glad you took it there. That's a great connection. Wear the T-shirt, be proud of it. And look, for the name like Lovesack, I can't tell you how many awkward plane conversations I've just stopped bringing it up because it's like, I'm not going to explain it, but here's the cool thing. You sit in those economy seats long enough, and I still do, man. Dude, I wish I didn't. I hate flying. I'm almost 2 million miles on Delta, while another 500,000 on United. Like, it's not something
Yeah.
I'm proud of.
Yeah.
But I used to, if it came up, I'd have to explain it. Now, because of, relentless TV advertising, digital, it's amazing to me how rare it is now to find someone who doesn't know the name Lovesack. And that wasn't the case for 2 decades. 2
So
decades.
true. I mean, I know
I'm
this
trying
personally
to tell someone
because,
I didn't work for like a porn company or something.
well, I mean, I remember when we first met, and this is probably 14, 15 years ago. And I would tell people, oh, my friend is the founder of Lovesack. And people would be like, what is
Neat.
that? And you had a bus that said Lovesack is not a dirty website or something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm misremembering.
No, I love
But
TikTok. Yeah.
but now, if I ever mention, Lovesack comes up naturally in conversation. We're looking at a lot of real estate. We're opening stores. Like, oh, there's a Lovesack here. I've been so proud to watch from the sidelines, and just like you are the kind of person that deserve every good thing. And people can make assumptions about others without really knowing them. I've
Yeah.
seen you as a father, as a husband. We've been at family outings together. You're even better than people guess, and you're great publicly, but I tell people all the time, he's even better than you can imagine. He's just such a great human. And I mean that. So,
Well, you're hired. You can
it's
come on
really
this
true.
pod anytime with this kind of
Good. I'm
flattery.
just trying to earn my intro back. Have I done that?
No, it's look, mutual respect, all the same sentiments for sure. And I'm so proud of you because when we first met, when I first listened to the business idea, besides feeling the way I felt and believing that there was a there, I believe that you thought and your partners thought, look, man, we're going to blow this up. We're going to flip it in 3 years to private equity, walk out the door with, whatever, multi-million, billion-dollar checks. And I believe it has taken you much longer than that. And that's not a criticism. That's just a pure observation. And by the way, probably the most likely observation. And I think that that's really what this Shawnism is all about, right? Maintaining our top ambitions. Like you want $1 billion brand, so do I. And having the infinite patience to do it. And I don't think you always had that patience, Nate, but I think you might
No,
now.
when we started, that is like, I don't know exactly what I thought, but I thought this can't be that hard. I've seen all these other direct to consumer companies start. I think if the right product, the right mix, like we'll just put a website up. Is field of dreams. People will come, they'll show up at the site, they'll purchase, and we had a lot of really early success. I don't know if you remember this, but in like our first couple months of launching, the Wall Street Journal wrote this story, and it was, these guys want you to stop wearing your wife's yoga pants. And it was a great headline, and the press just really worked. And we did $100,000 in sales in like 2 days.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, we didn't even have the inventory fully to support it. And I just remember thinking, like, this is easy. This is not that hard. It's just kind of, it's coming together. And I had done, if you remember, I had done a software startup before being at the NFL, and it was so hard and it was such a grind. And I learned so much from that. But I really thought, like, this is just going to be such a home run. And in year 3 of our company's history, and I think I've only told this story one other time, but it's a really important one. We got a call from the CFO of Athleta. And they said, we're really interested in Rhone. We'd like to spend some time together. And we've looked at the market, and we think you guys are doing some interesting things. The company was doing like $4 or $5 million in revenue. Like, it was nothing. And they flew me out to San Francisco. I meet with the global CEO of the Gap. This is a publicly traded company. And they're like, we want to buy you. And I remember thinking, this is crazy. Like, this is, it was like all coming together.
Yeah.
And the number wasn't like that good, but I just couldn't believe what had happened in like 3 years. And so within a week of that, we got another investment opportunity from the largest consumer private equity fund. And I sat there and I kind of thought, all right, we've done it. Like, now we figured it out. We solved the puzzle. But we ended up, on the Gap story, and I had to wait for a few years, like 5 years, because there's probably some NDA, statute of limitations, that I know is expired.
Yeah.
But the CEO basically told me, look, if you don't sell to us, we're just going to create a brand that looks like you, that sounds like you. And look, we have every resource at our disposal. We're going to crush you in the market. So this is a pretty easy decision for you.
Wow.
And I remember leaving and thinking, holy cow, like, all I know is I don't want to work for that guy. And so they ended up launching a brand 2 years later. The model, they used like 2 of the same models. They didn't even change some of the names of the products, but nobody cared because we were still tiny.
Yeah.
And they went on this big press tour about how they've like done this research, and there's a big market for men's, and they can make high quality product. This brand ended up lasting for 2 years, and then they closed it.
Wow.
And I bring this up only because I remember thinking, like, we were the kings of the world, and we were going to, we're beating the Gap. And I am telling you, Shawn, the thing that has stayed with me the most is my mindset shifted completely from admiring entrepreneurs and total respect to them that build businesses and sell them, to admiring people like you, like Phil Knight, the ones that stuck with it and built over time, because the aggregation of marginal gains, as it talks about in Atomic Habits, is so powerful. And most people I know who have sold their companies early on they miss it. Mm-hmm. And they miss the value that comes from, we get to do something so unbelievable that the compensation and the payout is one part of the benefit of being an entrepreneur. And if you work hard and you do it the right way and you're able to make it, man, it's such a blessing to be at this point, and we're not even there. Like, we've got so much work to do. So it's just, I don't know. I just have learned to love the grind and the grit, because I think that's what life is ultimately about.
Yeah, I love that you shared all of this already, because you and I swim in a sea of articles. You know, some of them get written about us, and you see it in the context of reality, and sometimes they're accurate, but of course the backstory's not there, so people don't know what's behind the curtain. You know, you could get the rosiest article in the Wall Street Journal and be hemorrhaging money or employees, or, you know, have who knows what, right? But you'll take it, of course, but you know the reality, right? You know what's really behind the curtain. And I think most people don't understand that about entrepreneurship and business, because most of the articles, especially in business, are written about the high flyers that not just experience what you got to experience, but the ones that sell, or the ones that just make $1 bazillion out of the gate, and so-and-so is a billionaire. And the thing is, those stories are out there, but they're actually the super rare ones. But the article count would have you believe that everyone's
It's
like
so
making
common.
money.
Yeah. Except for you.
Except for you. Yeah. You're the one that's just like, oh my gosh, man. And then you go to like a mixer, and then, just like I felt with you, it's like every idea is better than yours and easier than yours. And the truth is, man, it's all fake. It's all hard. Like, the truth is, everybody is grinding, and most won't even make it. Meanwhile, some weird company like Lovesac, or, you know, Rhone, which was, you know, a reluctant kind of startup for you as CEO, at least, you know, like, you were excited about the idea, but I remember, like, you know, like, everyone was on the fence of who's going to leave their job and run this, because you all have these high paying finance jobs or whatever. And now here you are, a decade in, almost. Is it a decade now?
10 years this year. Yeah.
There you go. And so that's why I had to have you, because you now know, and you, like me, believe in, I think you just said it, building something. And that's all that motivates me now. And recently for me, I shared this on my preamble, when I made the decision fairly recently to just go another 25. And I don't mean like, look, I could be fired tomorrow. Like, if I let my company down, we're a public company, man. I have to perform. I got to be Michael Jordan. And I'm okay with that. I write about that in the book. But like, my point is just making that mental decision. Like, I'm not looking for the exit so I can go be a, you know, whatever it is, what do they call it? A recurring entrepreneur, you know?
Oh,
like, I don't care.
Yeah.
We have this chance to build something really big, employ thousands, and generate the most sustainable solutions, not just for product, but for a business. Like, all the things that we're doing, it would take me, I think it's so hard to get to this point. Why, even if I could make more money doing that, why would I do that when I have the chance to build something beautiful with people that I love, spending my days how I want to spend? Like, what a blessing. And since I've made that decision, nothing can hurt me. Like, a downturn in the economy, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year or two. So what?
But that conviction is, I think that's even rare in entrepreneurship now. There is something that is like so celebrated in this idea of, you know, repeat entrepreneurs, or, you know, but that, I don't know. I think there's just something different about sticking with it. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And again, I showed our team this graph of Nike's revenues from the very beginning. And it took me a while to kind of try and assemble and piece this together. It took Nike 12 years to do 14 million in top line.
Wow.
And I even then did a second version of the graph in today's dollars. And so I was like, look, when you look at our revenue graph, there are some challenges in there. I mean, we had some really tough moments, and nobody even knows the half of it. Like the 2 months where I was covering payroll personally, and I was like, this goes bad. Like, I'm going to have to figure out what to do with my home, and like how to tell my wife. And I mean, you know, all of these things.
Yep.
And they, like, the terrifying moments of, man, I could have gone into so many different industries, and it would have been so much easier to make so much more money.
Why did I
doing
do this?
Something else? Why did I, the days where you're just scratching your head and the days where it feels really lonely and really hard because you also can't show that weakness to your team.
Or to the media. You got to go do an interview.
No, everything's going great and we're great and we're going to do it. And, at least I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I had to hold it all in and keep it together. And, but, back to this Nike story, that company is now doing north of $50 billion in annualized revenue, 60 years. But can you imagine having been there year 15, 16 of the business, and the company's doing like 17, 18 million of top line, and you're like, we're not really going anywhere. And you left. Yep. And,
but I think you're 15 years in, it's justified, isn't it? I mean, that's a good chunk.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. I mean, like no one can blame but what changed for us, and this is a big part of our story, is so we ended up bringing this private equity fund in, and look, they were great partners, learned a lot from them. I kind of was under the premise that, like if you get such a great investor in, like you don't even have to do anything. They just they do it for you. They're so smart. They'll help with supply chain, and it was largely like, hey, if you have a question, come to us. We'll connect you to other entrepreneurs. You can talk to them. And which like I already had somewhat in my life. And I just realized, oh, wait, this hasn't changed anything. We just have a little bit more money on the balance sheet. And now we're likely going to make some mistakes. But it was,
and when you do, now you've got someone who doesn't like your mistakes and everything's at risk.
Yeah. Yep. And you feel, at least for me, what changed is I felt like I wasn't running my company. I was working for someone else. I felt like I had a job again in a different way. And I didn't feel empowered to go take the risks, but that was me. That wasn't from them. That was just cognitively how I processed it. And 2.5 years ago, I was in a really bad place. I was in a really dark place because I was going through all these same thoughts that we were talking about. This is right out of the pandemic. And the pandemic was, for every leader, super scary, nerve-wracking, and there was a crisis every minute. Even when, in the beginning, when you're like, oh, shoot, this isn't going to work. People are going to stop buying things. Everybody's going to start saving.
Totally.
To, holy cow, there's unprecedented demand. Now we can't service the demand because we can't get the supply chain in order.
And the supply chain's all messed up globally.
And then you have social political issues on top of it. Should we be back in the office? Are people wearing masks? So-and-so won't wear a mask. Is everyone vaccinated? How are we thinking about racial tension in this country and all of these different pieces? There was a crisis every single week. Absolutely. And I was exhausted by it. And I felt like I didn't have the answers to all the questions, and people were upset about everything. And I just remember thinking, that's it. I'm done. I can't. I've been doing this for 7.5, 8 years. I thought I'd be, to your point, I thought I'd be so much farther along at this point. And I can't, I don't think I can do this anymore. Wow. And I talked to a lot of people because one of our mutual friends, a guy named Brian Rolap, who's very senior at the NFL, said to me, Nate, give yourself some time to think about this and then make a decision. But once you make the decision and be all in no matter what. If you want to sell the company, sell the company. If you want to stay at the company, stay at the company, but make a decision. And what I realized is if we're going to change, then if I'm going to stay with this is how it has to look. I want to get control back of the business. I want to buy out the private equity fund. I need to make some personnel changes. I need to bring some really smart, sharp people in at the top. And I'm going to commit myself without looking back, without hesitating, without wishing I would have gone after the finance job here or sold the business. I'm not going to pick my head up for 5 years. I'm not even going to think about it. I won't allow myself to. I am all in. The boats are burned. We're going on. We're going after this. And this is this is the order of operations. And that day was transformative for me because now I've given myself a playbook and I haven't given myself an exit hatch. There's no
Yeah.
parachute. Can't
Yeah.
jump out of this plane. And
ditch the safety net. I love it.
That's what we did. We bought out the private equity fund. We brought in 3 unbelievable C-level executives. And here we are 2.5, 3 years later, companies, in the best spot it's ever been from a revenue perspective, from a profitability perspective, from a human capital and talent perspective. And I feel like you, even though in some ways nothing's changed, everything's changed. Like the mindset of just saying, I admire companies and founders that are in this for the long haul versus before. For me, I was like, all right, in 5 years after they invested, I'm like, I have to be ready to sell and transact. And I just wasn't, that just changed dramatically for me.
That's amazing. I mean, so many things in there we could unpack, our Shawnism, hire better than you and let them own it, comes to mind. I love the concept of ditching the safety nets. I talk about that. I mean, for me, I just never had one at some point. Like the safety nets fell away because I had been in this so long. I'd been the beanbag boy for so long that like I had no safety net. I had no marketable skills. So like I had to like see this through. And there's so much power in that. There's so much power in just being all in, as they say. But if you can combine that with that patience, because the articles will drive you mad, because all the articles are written about how much somebody raised, how much their company's worth, how much they just exited for. And it will
well-intentioned people just send it to you. Like they just, that's the thing that they're like, oh, did you see so-and-so did such and such, or like, look at this. And I remember thinking to myself, man, this is a quick way to misery. This is a really quick way to misery.
How did I miss the free check line?
Yeah.
And look, there are other stories. And by the way, most of those stories are true. You and I know enough true stories, Nate, to know like behind almost everyone, there's a really gritty, ugly sub story that you may not know about.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make them not true either. They're just not your story. So whatever your story is, and I think this is an important thing I would like to pivot to, is like, you don't have to be an entrepreneur, by the way. We're talking about all this money raising and funding and entrepreneur stuff. Big, it's like, these are super white collar problems, right? Super first world problems to have in the first place. But I think this concept of top ambition, whatever that means to you in whatever role you're playing, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You could be a player inside a company. You could be a dad, a stay-at-home dad, a stay-at-home mom, whatever it is that you're doing. If you can find and identify a top ambition, like in your case, it's building $1 billion brand, in my case, similar, I guess, and marry that with the patience necessary to do whatever it takes to just keep chasing that down, you will wake up one day. This is how my book closes, actually. I'm going to read you the last sentence of my book.
Which I had a privilege of reviewing a draft, and I love this book. So go ahead.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, I mean, but just to drive this home, even if you shoot for the stars but only land on the moon, you will still have made it to outer space. It will have been the adventure called your life. It will be satisfying, and it will be your fault. And that's why it's been so much fun for me to watch you, because I feel like I've got to see the whole arc. Like you got to see Lovesac somewhere in the ugly middle. And thankfully, we're not done. That's the crazy part. I've mentioned this in other interviews. Like I reflected on this in the book. I felt just as insecure at Lovesac at, 70,000 in sales back in college, to 700,000 in sales with our first store, to 7 million in sales with a bunch of stores and angry franchisees, to 70 million on the eve before our IPO, when I thought, if we can't get funding, we're done. You knew me then. We were raising our kids down the street from each other then.
Totally.
To 700 today. And it's competition, and it's global pandemics or global supply chain or this or that or the economy or inflation. And what's wild is it's still the adventure called your life. And I've got to see, yours unfold and see you develop this infinite patience paired with top ambition that you never lost somehow, or that you you decided one day to pursue relentlessly with no safety net. And here's the crazy thing, Nate. It'll happen for you. It's happening with an ing. It's happening for me. And you could call it the secret. You could call it manifestation. You could call it making your own luck. There is just tremendous power in the combination of the belief, the top ambition, whatever that is to you, and the infinite patience. And I think most people aren't willing to here's the cool thing. You may get sideswiped by some kind of buyout, by some kind of amazing outcome. But I believe there is magic in making that mental decision, even if it doesn't happen for you, even if you get taken out at year 3. But when you make that decision, like, I'll go as long as it takes, I will go as long as it takes. There's power.
Yeah, you don't want to bet in somebody who has that mindset, right? Like that is and it's also the gift that pays off in so many other areas of your life. I think that being fully committed, and let other people say what they will, right? I think the mindset that I fully embraced is this: when I went through this period, my brother, he just said this to me over and over and over again. Remember, Nate, comparison is the thief of joy. And I was like, I'm not comparing but I was. I compared, myself against myself. I compared myself against others. I compared our company against other companies. And it may even be cliche to say, but there is such power in absolute versus relativity. And what I mean by that is finding happiness in the absolute versus your comparison to anything else.
Yep.
And I think about, the struggles and the challenges and finding joy in that. What have I learned from those experiences? I am a much more patient and thoughtful leader now because of what we've gone through than if everything had gone easily. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that everything just kind of came to us and that we sold, and then what would I have learned? And I know, if at the end of this life, hovering over it and looking back, and I could choose one or the other, I just know my mindset and what I would choose. 100 times out of 100, I would want the journey. I would want the path. I would want the struggle and the challenge. You don't learn from things being easy, and you don't learn when things all work out. You learn from that struggle and that challenge and that, what I've become obsessed with is being more of a consistent person, which is something I've always struggled with as a kid. I was very ADHD. That consistency and just learning to appreciate the process versus the result. You and I were talking about this earlier. You have 4 amazing kids, and I've had the privilege of watching you raise them. But as talented as Lucky is at the piano, or Duke is at I don't know if he's still doing dance. He was really into hip hop dance when he was out here. He might be doing something.
He's a drummer now.
Okay, at drums. You can, as a parent, get caught up in praising the result, and instead learning to teach them to love the process. That is, for me, what this whole experience has been about. Without, to your point, losing the ambition. When we took the company, quote unquote, private away from these investors, what I told our team is, don't think for a minute that we are slowing down our ambition to grow and to be successful. We are doubling down on that, because I've put more exposure. Everything I have is at risk. I put it all the chips are in. And I am loving there's still so much pressure, but I'm loving this pressure. It just feels different.
I love that, man. So many things to unpack. Again, this idea of embracing economic pressure. I've ranted on this since I was like in my 20s, because I had put myself in so much debt. It's so many different times along the way where if I didn't somehow see it through, I will be financially destroyed. I will be a crater in the earth with people cursing my name. And I felt that way, and to some degree still feel that way. And there is so much power in that. And, I'm not advocating that you go into debt. There's lots of different ways, like with what you achieved with your investors and buying them back, you put it all on the line. And so now it's like, you have to perform. And so the combination of making that decision, not looking back. I love what you said about make the decision and own it, and do not look back. Do not second guess it. And when you can finally do that mentally, I don't know, man, there's just power in it. And I think most people, they kind of pretend to, but they kind of keep one foot on the dock, and that doesn't usually end well, when you're trying to.
I think I would have put myself in that category for a couple of years, where it was like, well, I can always take the escape hatch and go and do something. It wasn't until I just said, this is my legacy. Like I wasn't a quote unquote clothing guy. I don't know if when you were like 12, you're like, you know what I want to do? I want to run a furniture company.
Right. No,
right?
no.
But you're not running a furniture company like that. That's what we say. We have 10 non-negotiables. And the first one is, Rhone is a wellness brand that promotes physical and mental health. We just happen to sell clothes.
Love it.
And like that is, but I did have ambitions to do that. I did have ambitions to build a brand that could positively impact the lives of the people that we interact with. And, you as a leader impacting your team and your employees. Every time I pass a Lovesac store, I go in and I talk to the team and, why do you love working at Lovesac? And, eventually it'll come out, oh, I know Shawn. It's just like these managers light up when they hear about you. Do you know how many furniture companies there are that like none of them have that? Zero besides you. And I think that's your legacy, whatever the financial outcome or result, like that. It's just, what is your currency? And I think the currency, in addition to the hard currency, the currency is like, how do you value and appreciate the present moment and what you're doing? And you and I both know a lot of wealthy people. We know wealthy people who are happy, and we know wealthy people who are miserable. Yeah. And the wealthy people who are happy are the same kind of people who would be happy if they weren't wealthy, because they learn to value the present.
Well, I love what you said earlier about the absolute versus the relative. I know so many 100 millionaires and billionaires who kind of look at me. Maybe, I don't know what they think. They probably don't think about me, but like, it's very likely I'll never make that kind of money or do that kind of, because it's the way the chips have fallen for me and the way Lovesac's unfolded, whatever. But I look at my life, the absolute value of my life and how I come and go and what I do. I woke up this morning at dawn and went dirt biking because I get to live in sunny St. George and build a company here and, raise kids in this area and whatever. Like, there's so many things that I can just feel nothing but gratitude for if you choose to, and not play that comparison game. That's a big one. And I think both of us have found this purpose. I don't know that you began Rhone I with that in mind. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I definitely have seen it emerge as Rhone has matured, as no longer, any kind of marketing, but as like a genuine purpose that is driving and enervating you and probably your team. And of course your customer base as you, promote health and wellness and mental wellness. And, it's something that you've pivoted into, just like Lovesac. I was just trying to survive. I was making beanbags to pay the bills and trying to get out of debt or whatever. But now I truly believe we can make the most sustainable solutions in every realm of your home in tech. And nobody's making products that, like this couch I'm sitting on, 17, it's older than Lucky. It's 17 years old, these pieces, wearing brand new covers, integrated with stealth tech, right? Like, who makes products like that? The answer is nobody. But I didn't have that in the beginning. I had to keep going to find that. Yeah.
And you don't know when that's going to hit along the path.
Yeah.
I mean, here's another Shawnism that I love, because you've probably shared all of these with me. When I was going through the book, I was like, oh yeah, he said that to me. He said that to me. But you were like, play along the way. And, I remember multiple occasions where we'd wake up, we'd meet on the Long Island Sound to go wake surfing for like 2 hours, and then come back. We'd both be the first ones in the office. Yeah. And we felt like we won the lottery. Yep. To go out, be on the water. we were the kings of the world, and like that.
And by the way, that was on a 1990 Mastercraft that had fat sacks in the back to make the wake. Like, you don't need a yacht to just live the best kind of life if you're willing to put in the effort and try to appreciate it while it's happening.
Yeah. I mean, just getting on. I love that about you, that it wasn't, let's not wait until we reach this point and where there's unlimited resources, unlimited capital. Let's enjoy it as we go. And I think you have to do that, or you will burn out as a founder, as an entrepreneur, or really as a human. There's the quote unquote American dream of working for some big payoff is not the American dream anymore. The dream is learning how to find peace and joy in what you already have without losing that ambition to continue to grow and develop. It's a really tricky balance. And it's not something that I speak from having achieved, because you've got to do the work. You've got to do the mindset work on a daily basis. You've got to think, you've got to keep yourself focused. And all I know is I'm committed to the process. I'm committed to that process of continuing to find that inspiration, the passion, the ambition, and just never, ever, ever giving up. You're going to have to put 4 sumo wrestlers on to stop me, because I won't stop until we get to where we say we're going to get to.
Yeah. And the best part is something may happen, a buyout may happen, that you choose to pursue a downside that takes you out of business may happen. But either way, if you've lived actively a great life along the way and found some happiness as you're going, not to mention all the personal development came from all this, and you stop playing that comparison game. I think a lot of people mistake the American dream, and we're going on and on about entrepreneurship, for being rich and retiring early and doing whatever I want. Look, I'm actually, as I've gotten older, I believe that it's not a mistake that 99.9% of the people in the world just have to work their whole life. I know it sounds dreamy not to, but I've had people who have somehow bagged the early retirement in a vulnerable moment tell me I actually sometimes envy you, Shawn, because my kids don't see me work. My kids see me ride my road bike a lot. My kids see me work out a lot. My kids see me go on, you know what I mean? And what I'm trying to express is, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, even if you're just, finding a living and doing something you didn't even mean to do, your life is happening to you right now. So live it and enjoy the grind and enjoy the work, even with the economic pressure in my case or your case. And even, because it looks so glamorous from the outside. Everyone looks at a guy running a $100 million company or a $700 million company, thinks oh man, and no doubt, I have more resource than I did at one point, but I have more pressure than I did at one point. And I've just learned to just bask in it and live in it and try not to wish my kids' youth away, because that'll evaporate, and not try to compare myself to the dude who got to retire and get to spend all his time with the kids. Because that doesn't happen either. They got to go to school. They got to live their life too. So don't fool yourself and think I could be a better dad if I didn't have to work so much.
Yeah. I just think, again, I reiterate a lot of what you said, because if you can commit to doing the work, whatever that means for you, showing up day in and day out and finding joy in the process and not the result, that for me has been the key, is learning to love. I have this Vince Lombardi quote, and it says, "I've never known a man worth his salt who didn't love the grind." And I remember when I first read that, I was like, gosh, I don't know if I feel that way. I don't know if I feel that way about myself. And now, but you are what you repeatedly do. Showing up day in and day out. There is nothing that someone can take away from you. I'm convinced entrepreneurs are like this, but I could take you, Shawn, and I could drop you into a foreign country with $0 in your pocket, not even speaking the language. And I know you would figure out a way to not just survive, but thrive. You'd get a job at some local shop. You'd work your way until you'd charm your way into something else. That confidence cannot be taken away from you. You have earned that by virtue of repeatedly putting in the work over and over again. And I'm not there yet, but
No,
I'm
please.
committed to staying. I'm committed to staying in the process. Like I'm not, that's why I've fallen in love with endurance sports, because to me, there's such a mental game. I was not a natural distance anything. I was a sprinter. I was a football player, but I now run marathons because I
Wow.
love that, like, just gritty mindset of you can't quit. You got to stick with this.
Well, come run the Spartan race with us in August. The
Yes.
whole Love
Yeah.
Sack.
With our boy, Joe.
Yeah, Dan, the whole Love Sack family, all of our employees in the Northeast, probably some will fly out, all of our fans, and we're going to have a huge contingency there. I think it's August 18th or 19th. So keep your ear to the ground on that. Anyone listening to my voice can come out on us on Love Sack
Would love that.
and run this Spartan race with us in Massachusetts. It's going to be fun. How do you, Nate, speaking of others now, you and I undoubtedly have become what we've repeatedly done, for better or for worse. And how do you, though, consciously develop a little bit of this, maybe both top ambition? How do you develop that? How do you, because I don't know that everyone, maybe for you and I, it's natural. Like we're just ambitious. We're like greedy. I don't know, whatever it is that drives us. How do you develop the top ambition? How do you develop the infinite patience? Or must life just cram it down your throat until you enjoy it like we have?
On the ambition piece, I think everybody has ambition for something, and it might not be business success. It might be, traveling to a certain number of countries or achieving mastery in a certain skill. I think you and I are crazy in the sense that we kind of want it all. Like you want to be great at riding motorcycles and, wake surfing and playing the piano and speaking Mandarin and, and also a great business leader. But whatever your ambition is, I think it is so powerful to write that down and to commit to it, because I was told that a goal is not a goal until it's written. It's a dream. And I love the idea of writing these big, like actually really scripting it out and saying, this is what I want to achieve, and making sure that it is your dream. It's not your parents' dream. It's not your spouse's dream. It's not your friend's dream. It's your dream. It's what you want, and really getting connected with that purpose. And I did a lot of this self-discovery work probably 12 years ago. It was really powerful for me, where I could tell you exactly what I feel is my life's purpose. And so that has grounded me and connected me. And by the way, it's not just business.
Yeah.
The last line of this little paragraph that I wrote is, I will change the world through faith, love, and innovation. And that's what I'm committed to doing. Whether it's the work at Beyond Type 1 that we're doing on diabetes and trying to heal and solve that disease, or the work that we're doing at Rhone to try and help people improve their mental health and develop the capacity to take care of themselves and the willingness to take care of themselves on a daily basis in the same way that they think about physical health. I'm so committed to that mission. And so that, I believe, really helps drive ambition. And I love that Steve Jobs quote that only those who are crazy enough to believe they can change the world are the ones that actually do. Yeah. So believing in it, giving that mission life by giving voice to it. And then,
by the way, let me add to your quote list. I think it's a Lencioni quote. There's a cosmic connection between your mind and your hand. And if you can write it down, you can probably do it. And it's wild. I'll sometimes pull out of the archives our Love Sack, whatever, like presentations from like 2014, 15, 16. I've showed them at like our manager fest and stuff. And almost everything we ever put on paper, we went and did. And it didn't always happen in the right year or whatever.
The time frame, right? Yeah.
And same thing with my own notes. I'll make notes in my notes app on my phone, just little things, my New Year's resolutions, whatever they are. And I'll look back a few years and it's wild. Almost everything I ever put down, it doesn't always happen in that year, but it happens.
Yeah. Like, did you think you would ever write a book or launch a podcast? I'm sure you did, because now you have one, right? Maybe
Well,
20
yeah,
years ago you didn't,
I
but
wrote it
you know,
down
like,
and
yeah,
eventually it came
exactly.
out. Yeah, that's true.
And I think there's something to be said. So you have your dream, you have your ambition, and then you have to ask yourself the hard question: are my actions consistent with what I want? Because it's not enough. I've never, I've read The Secret, and I believe there is an absolute connection with stating what you want, and I think it will naturally lead you to take action. But I'm a big believer in self-review, self-check. And on a quarterly basis, I kind of write out, these are the big milestones of things that I'm trying to achieve this quarter. And then on a weekly basis, I'm checking back in. Am I staying consistent to those things? And again, not everything goes in the time or the pace. But I just think that work is important. And I think that in order to maintain it, sometimes your standards need to elevate because you reach a milestone, which is a great problem to have.
I love it. Well, look, this is the best part about knowing people like you, Nate, is that when I hear you articulate how you live your life and what you believe in, there is just no doubt. You probably feel doubt at different times, like we all do, if we're being honest. But me looking from the outside in, and I know you well, there's just no doubt that you're going to win. You're going to be successful. And it's not because, you were born that way necessarily, or that you were in the right place at the right time with the right movement for Rhone, which, by the way, is now no longer just a menswear brand, but as of like today
we launched women's. It's wild.
And Rhone will become great, but forget Rhone. You will. And by the way, I have a similar statement for myself. Isn't that neat? Isn't that funny that we both have gravitated in that way? And I review it every day. I have this morning mantra that I wrote out for myself, and it captures a lot of what I believe in, not for Lovesac, for me as a human on the earth. And it hopefully tries to keep me on the right track to running those down. And it's similarly to you. I believe that you will affect the world for good, and with or without Rhone. And that's in the end what matters. And so, look, we could go on for hours, you and I, and I'll have to have you back, please.
Well, it's a privilege to talk to you, honestly, in this format. Whether anybody else listens, you and I, this is kind of how we talk when it's just the two of us, anyways.
We can't hang out too much, or we'll just be like esoteric nerds, like principles and motives.
Greek philosophers in togas
in our own minds. But yes, you can't get enough of Nate Checketts, but you can follow him, as I do, at Nate Checketts, 2 T's, on Instagram or LinkedIn, where he's always putting out great content focused on wellness, both physical and mental. Rhone, of course, Rhone. If you're not into Rhone gear, I wear it on the daily. It makes it into my dirt bike regime, my hiking, all kinds of physical activities. Nate's funny. He's real. He's open. He's honest. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast or video, and please give it a star rating. Every bit makes a huge difference. Thanks in advance. Maybe share it out on social media to help others save a chunk off their own 25-year journey, because you're just that good of a friend. Thank you so much to the mogul of menswear and women's wear, the Maharaja of mental health, literally one of the most genuinely generous, hardworking, and sincere friends you'd be lucky enough to have. Thank you, Mr. Nate Checketts.
Thank you, Shawn. I'm so honored to be on with you. Thanks.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, remember, maintain your top ambitions with infinite patience. It will serve you well.